John's going to be a little bit late to the meeting. So if you see him missing, he's coming. He had to get his son somewhere. James Vinoy, show your face. I see that you're trying to get on here.
Today is bring the nephew home with me day, so we're being lazy here on the couch. So I figured you all didn't want to see us sitting around here.
I'm like, for those of you guys that that aren't as active on here, James is a brand new member and he has jumped in and offered all kinds of help. So
I'm excited to.
I'm very appreciative.
Meet everyone.
I'm very appreciative of your offers, and I will take you up on every one of them.
Well, thank you.
I'm not sure if Eric is on here yet. There's a couple of people on here that I'm just seeing a phone number. Actually, that looks like Angie. It's just the phone number showing. So it looks like Eric is not on here yet, but we're still a little early. While we're, here, Eric is getting in now. While we're waiting a couple minutes for everybody to get in, and I'm having to admit people individually into the meeting, so I'll keep looking away here. But I want to remind everybody a couple of things. If you are required to have smoke detectors in your unit, so if you don't, get them in every bedroom right away. And if you have lived in a house and have homeowners insurance and then you switch it over as a rental, you have to cancel your rental insurance and get landlord's insurance. I just had a neighbor where I used to live. He had lived there for 40 years. He moved out and moved down the road into his mom's house who had passed away. And he moved somebody into his house to fix it up. And then when it got fixed up, he was going to sell it. Well, the house burned down. And now the insurance is saying they're not covering it because he had homeowners insurance and he wasn't residing in the home.
Oh, yeah.
So if you guys are in that situation where you own something and have homeowners insurance, but you have a renter in there, fix that now. Fix it now.
Yeah.
All right, looks like Erica is on here. So she's got herself muted though. So we're going to see if she pops up here. If so, I'm going to go ahead and give it over to her to take over. It looks like maybe she's working on it. But yeah, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jennifer McQuarrie. I'm the president of the State Landlords Association. And then John Pritt will pop in here a little later. He's running kind of the Charleston part of it, which we're now a one statewide organization. We're not individual chapters anymore. We're one. But John kind of takes care of the local stuff here. So, okay, Erica, if you're on here, if you want to jump in and take over.
Okay, well, good evening. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to turn this over to some of my program people, but I want to introduce everybody that's on here from the Housing Development Fund. So I'm the executive director. I've been with the agency about 34 years. We have Julie Davis. She's our deputy director of production. Crystal Toney is deputy director for administration. Nate Testman is our senior division manager for multifamily lending. Kristen Schaefer is our senior legal counsel, and Dorothy White is our federal compliance officer. So I'm gonna turn this over to Nate and let him explain to you what we know about the program so far. But I want to be really clear. We are still developing this program. We're still awaiting some additional guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department on several issues. So nothing is set in stone at this point, but we will try to tell you what we know at this point and answer the questions that you have. And I know Jennifer sent some questions ahead that you all had asked, so we will try to take those. So I will turn it over to Nate.
Thanks, Erica. And, there's a lot of excitement on our end about this program. There's a lot of funds available that have made, that'll have a big impact to our state. So we hope that you guys are as excited about this as we are. I think this money could make a big difference in our state, but really interested in your thoughts and questions or concerns that you have in this program. So I will keep the program overview rather brief. and leave plenty of time for questions and comments. We can drill down as much as you want on any of the program guidelines or to answer any questions that you have. So as I go along here, you can use the chat feature. If you've joined by Zoom, feel free to type any questions that you may have in that chat feature, and we'll make sure to get those questions addressed as you go. Or if you want to wait until we open it up just for general Q&A, that's fine too. So from a very high level, the purpose of this Mountaineer rental assistance program is to provide emergency rental assistance and utility assistance to renter households in West Virginia. Our state was allocated $200 million. Of that $200 million, a minimum of 90% or $180 million must be used for rental and utility expenses. And the other 10% can be used for costs to administer the program and for other eligible uses. So the types of assistance that can be provided through this program, they're both geared towards rent and utility assistance. We can cover past due rents that date back to April of 2020. We can pay prospective rent payments in 3-month increments. However, it's important to note that all past due rent must be paid before we can begin to pay the prospective rent payments. So just an example of that, if a tenant is 6 months past due on their rent, we can, with their first application to us, we can cover the 6 months of rent that they are past due, plus up to 3 months of rent in advance. So we do have some maximum. This program is geared towards a 12-month maximum of assistance for renters. And in certain scenarios, we can extend that an extra 3 months if it's deemed necessary for housing stability. So in that example I provided with the 6 months of past due rent and 3 months of rent in advance, that tenant will have used 9 months of the 12-month maximum available to them. They can come back in and reapply after that 3-month period for an additional 3 months. And at that point, they would have used the 12-month maximum unless it's deemed necessary that we extend the extra 3 months for housing stability. So in addition to rent payments, this program is also available for past due utility expenses. That may be less of an interest to this group, but we're happy to talk through the utility expenses that may be due. To be eligible for the utility expenses, it has to be a bill that's directly from the utility company to the tenant. And to clarify, any utility expenses that are due as part of the rent, those would have to be applied for through the rent portion of the program. Eligible applicants, they must meet all four of the eligibility criteria. I'll go through each one. First, they must be a renter household, and this would exclude any tenants that have an ownership stake in the property that they live in. It would exclude lease to own situations, and it also excludes renters that are receiving some forms of federal, state, or local rental assistance. So if your tenant is receiving a monthly voucher or monthly rental assistance, and if that assistance can be adjusted based on fluctuations in their income, those tenants would not be eligible for this type of assistance. However, there are some other ongoing forms of rental assistance where the amount of the rental assistance is fixed and therefore cannot be increased if the tenant's income decreases. And if they're receiving one of those forms of rental assistance, then the unsubsidized portion of their rent would be eligible for this type of assistance. Let me just open up this chat box. Okay, good question here. I think the question is, what if the tenant did not have assistance in the past, but they now have a rental assistance currently? If the past due amount that's being requested is for a time frame where the tenant did not have that form of assistance, I believe that those months would be eligible for assistance. So only the months during which the tenant was receiving housing assistance that could not be adjusted based on fluctuations in their income would be ineligible. That's a great question. So the first eligibility criteria we covered, that's the applicant must be a renter household. We talked about a couple things that would make that renter ineligible. The second eligibility criterion is that the household income cannot exceed 80% of area median income. So we have information that, Erica, I may ask you, have we sent the AMI levels and okay, so we've sent that through to the Landlords Association? Okay. So the renter household income cannot exceed 80% of area median income. We've distributed some of that information, but if there are questions specific about that, we will have information available on our website and in our program materials for you and for the renters to reference whether or not you qualify for that threshold. The third eligibility criteria is since March 13th of 2020, at least one household member has either qualified for unemployment benefits or experienced a reduction in income, incurred significant costs, or experienced other financial hardship due to the pandemic. So this one's an either or. If they've qualified for unemployment during this period since March 13th, 2020, that would qualify them. Or if they have experienced a reduction in income, incurred significant costs, or experienced another financial hardship due to the pandemic, that would qualify them for this third eligibility criterion. And the last one, number 4, since March 13th, 2020, at least one member of the household can demonstrate a risk of homelessness or housing instability. Some easy examples of this would be a past due rent notice, an eviction notice, or anything that they can demonstrate to us that they are at risk of being homeless. So definitely something that I think the landlords could help out with if the tenants are having trouble documenting that. Hopefully you could help out with those late notices or documentation that they could submit to us to fulfill that criteria. As far as payments go for eligible applicants, the payments must go to the landlords. The only deviation from that is if the landlord is unwilling to accept payments. And there's a process we'd have to go through on our end, but if the landlords are unwilling to accept the payments, then in certain circumstances we can pay the renter directly, but that's only if the landlords are unwilling. As far as the application process goes, we are hopeful to direct most interested applicants to an online portal through our website. The application can be initiated by either the renter or the landlord, but in either case, both parties will need to submit information as part of the application. So if the renter initiates the application, notification will be sent to the landlord once the tenant portion has been completed for the landlord to verify. And the opposite is true. If the landlord initiates the application, once the landlord finishes their portion, the renter would then have to go and verify information and provide information. We understand that not everyone will be able to access the online portal. So we will have other ways for applications to be made. We will have a call center set up for application assistance. We also anticipate the ability to request mail packets if we need to exchange mail for the completion and review of the application. So I will stop there. There's a few other items that I'd like to go through. But I want to stop there and just ask at a high level if there are any questions about the program or any topics that you would like for us to expand on.
All right, I'm going to ask a question for Kathy Wood, who I think that they're trying to get on right now. She had asked, as far as documentation, will a letter or notice stating that an eviction is imminent or a notice to pay or vacate be enough, or do we have to have a court order to be prioritized?
No, really, a past due notice. To answer the question directly, a court here, evidence of a court proceeding is not necessary to be eligible for the program. Really, to meet the criteria here, and that'd be under number 4, so the household can demonstrate a risk of homelessness or housing instability. A past due notice would work. Certainly a notice of eviction would work. Now, so I hope that answers the question directly. We're just looking for something to help us substantiate that the renter is past due, and we're looking for confirmation from the landlords on the amounts and the months that the tenants are past due.
I think the question was about somewhere in the documentation there was something about groups being prioritized. I know groups under 50% of the area median income were prioritized. And I think there was something else in there about, basically if something was happening right now, they would be prioritized. I think that question was more, was that necessary to be in that priority list?
Sure, I can address that. So there is a preference for households that are earning 50% or less of area median income, or households that at least one member has been unemployed for the 90 days or more leading up to the application. And for this population, we have reserved 120 million of the minimum 180 million that's available for households that fall in either one of those criteria. Now, we've also been in discussions in our program development about different things that we could prioritize, and if we do prioritize those, how that would work in administering the program. But as Erica mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're still developing those things, and the only thing that that we know that we have to prioritize based on the legislation is the households that are earning no more than 50% of AMI, and households that have that 90 days or more of unemployment leading up to the date of the application.
So
Okay.
just to ask you a quick question, if I could, how long is these funds going to be available for rental assistance?
It's a good question. There are two important dates. Right now, I believe the legislation says that these funds will be available through December of 2021. However, September 30th is a critical date in the program. The United States Treasury has indicated that as of October 1st, so immediately after September 30th, they may recapture all of the unused funds from states and then reallocate those funds back through the states based on how well states have dispersed the money so far. So we feel that September 30th is a critical date, and we're making best efforts to get as much of these funds out prior to that date. One, because we know that there are so many renters and landlords that are in need of this money, but also we would hate to see any funds be recaptured from West Virginia and then distributed to another state. So
Okay.
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then just to follow up about the priority, I guess, whatever, I didn't see the list, but you got to prioritize the funds. So you're prioritizing 120 million for make 50% of the median income. Is that correct? Under 50% of their median. So my question would be, let's say you have a family who is above that 50%, and they do apply, and if they don't get us the fund, obviously we have to file wrongful occupation. Would you allow them to be evicted and go homeless, or would you still give them the so that they could stay?
Well, there's a couple things. We will still process applications for households that are at 51% to 80% of AMI. We anticipate processing those applications at the same time. So there would be no delay in processing for the households that don't meet the preference criteria. But we've also anticipate leaving ourselves some flexibility in the numbers for prioritization. So if we see lopsided demand or based on the actual usage of the funds, we will leave ourselves the flexibility to make some decisions down the road on whether we switch those amounts or just making sure that we're meeting the needs of the households in West Virginia.
Yeah, I just think it's important, we look at the situation as a whole from my perspective, that if people are in need of the rental assistance, that, they shouldn't be denied, funds are allocated for a certain group. Because I kind of look at it like if people truly need the funds, they should be able to access those.
We completely agree with that. And one of the things we need to keep in mind too is that the preference or having a preference was not an option to us. So it's part of the legislation, and to meet that requirement in the legislation, we have to have some form of preference for those groups. So it's not all just Housing Development Fund. We're trying to create the program to meet the needs of the landlords and renters in West Virginia, but also making sure that we meet all the criteria in the legislation.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got a couple of questions down in the chat box. Okay. I'm going to try to find you here and unmute you so you can ask your question directly. If you can unmute yourself, go ahead. Okay. I hit a button to ask you to unmute. So if you'll unmute yourself to ask the question.
Okay,
Hey.
am I unmuted now?
You're good. Yep.
Okay, so my question is, will any kind of an inspection be required like is used with emergency services grant?
Good question. No, property inspections are not part of the legislation or our program.
What about other in documentation like is used with emergency services grant, like a W-9 or a lease or a memorandum of understanding?
I may be getting ahead of myself, and Crystal or Julie or Erica, you tell me if I say anything wrong, but I believe we will need W-9s from landlords so that we know who we're paying and making sure that we're paying the right person. So that leads me into a couple other things. Well, I guess we can take some more questions and we can get into a couple of these other things. But yes, we will want to see W-9s from the landlords.
I have a question. My question is, if I understand the process, hold on a minute, got too much. Okay, if I understand the process, there's paperwork involved, which can be readily available over the internet. And where else?
So if you're asking about the application process and how to apply, so we anticipate launching the online portal in March, and all of our application documents can be received there. And you can actually, you wouldn't need to print anything there. You can actually apply through this online portal. We can also mail you an application and have a way for you to mail it back to us to review. Or we'll have hard copies able to be printed from our website if you'd rather print those from the website.
My understanding though that who initiates this? Does the tenant initiate it, or does the landlord?
It can be either party. So if you're applying through the online portal, that will have to be initiated, or it can be initiated either through the renter or the landlord. If the renter initiates the application through the online portal, then once the renter completes their portion, a notification through email would be sent to the landlord to log into the portal to complete their portion of the application. And the same would be true in reverse. If the landlord initiates the application online, once the landlord completes their portion, an email notification will be sent to the renter, and the renter would log in and complete their portion. Now, if we're dealing with hard copy applications, then the landlord and the renter would have to coordinate for a full application and before submitting it to the Housing Development Fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like Jill, I'll let you ask your question next.
Yeah, just, was there any type of timeline on the distribution of funds established yet, or is that still something that's kind of in the works?
It's still in the works. It's a very difficult question to answer because we don't know how quickly we'll receive applications and the amount of applications that we will receive. So I don't have a great answer for you yet, other than just to reinforce some of the comments earlier that we're going to be judged by how quickly we can get the funds out the door, and we want to see these funds in the hands of the renters that need it and the landlords that need it. So we're very committed to getting these applications processed and the payments made as quick as possible, but it's a really tough question to answer at this point, just because we don't know what we're going to be faced with as soon as we roll out the program.
Question. How will you notify people, landlords? How are landlords be notified?
Notified of the rollout of the program, or
When the program is alive?
so we have something on our webpage currently that will allow you to give us your contact information. And if you have yet to do this, I would encourage everyone on this call to do so. You can give us your email address through the website, or if another method is preferable. But we'd love to have your email address so that when the program does roll out, you will get a notification that we're now accepting applications. That's probably the best way to make sure you're notified.
Hey, let me jump in here a little bit too. That is a good way for you to make sure you're notified. But we're also going to be doing some press releases, some advertising. When this is ready to roll out, there's going to be, we got to reach statewide. So there's going to be lots of public announcements so that landlords will know about it, tenants will know about it. We'll also do some outreach through a lot of our housing organizations that work with tenants. So we're going to be taking, full court press on making sure everybody knows this is available.
And Eric, the Landlord Association will also be sending you out notifications when everything is ready to go to.
We appreciate that. We'll be calling on you to help.
Yeah. All right, Peter, you're next for your question.
Yeah, I had a question. Is a tenant ineligible for the program if they have, say, a criminal background?
No.
Okay, great.
All
Is
right.
there any kind of a background that would cause there to be ineligibility? I guess not.
Well, HUD has a couple.
I know HUD has a few. That's kind of why I was asking.
So if we're asking about the criminal background, so there's nothing in the legislation, there's nothing in our program guide that would disqualify an applicant because of criminal background.
Thanks.
Kristen, you tell me if I say anything wrong.
Okay, LK has another question. Are you on here? I'll
I
go
think
ahead.
she's on mute.
Okay. I'll try to get her. Her question is, how will tenants prove their income or other qualifications?
So we will need for income source documentation, and tenants will have the option to qualify on an annual basis or on a monthly basis. And there will be a lot of information about this in our program materials, but at a very high level, they can either qualify with, say, their 2020 tax returns. I know that's a little bit early right now for folks to have those available, but their 2020 tax returns would be a way they could do it on an annual basis. But if they want to qualify on a monthly basis, then we're going to be looking for things like pay stubs and other earning statements. And that's one thing that in the legislation that was very clear that we need. We're going to have that source documentation to show their income.
Okay, and one more question related to that. What if they're on something like SSI?
So that's fine. Statements such as, and there'll be a list of the types of incomes that we're looking for. It's a pretty lengthy list. That's definitely included. Any documentation that shows any income that they get, we're going to want to see. And there'll be much more information on that when we roll out our program materials and as the tenants are applying.
Question. Is there an effort to simplify this application, or will it look more like a tax return?
Well, we would love to make this as quick and easy as possible. I will say that the legislation doesn't allow us to make it as easy as we would have liked it to be. So I think our commitment to the applicants and to the landlords is that we're trying to make it as easy as we can by, while also playing by the rules. So we're not looking to junk this up with extra requirements or extra hoops to jump through. We want to be sensitive to that so we can get the money out the door.
All right, James has got the next question, and I've been trying to get him to unmute.
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm just
good,
waiting.
good.
So I could see, unfortunately, a couple of tenants or many tenants using this as a process to prolong their stay within our units and such. So I'm just kind of curious to what or how involved the landlords may be during the process to know that our tenants are taking the steps needed, aren't wasting time just trying to stay longer without any type of pay. Are we going to be notified during these steps, or will we be able to log into the portal to see these things happening?
You will be. I believe there's 8 to 10 steps in the application process. And at each point in the application process, notifications will be sent. It'll be very clear where these applications are in the review process. So I think that the online portal will be very transparent on the status of the application.
Great.
Okay, looks like Ben Atkins.
I don't know if this has been answered or not, but when the funds are dispersed, will the funds be dispersed to the tenants, to the landlords? How will that be handled?
So these funds must be dispersed to the landlord, and the only way that they will not be dispersed to the landlord is if the landlord is unwilling to accept the payments. And that's clear in the legislation. So as long as the landlords are willing to accept it, it has to come to you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to ask one off the list, and then we're going to go to LK. You talked a little bit about this had to be renters only, but what about the case where they're rent with the option to purchase or rent to own? I assume rent to own is out. I assume land contract is out, but rent with the option to purchase, where does that fall in?
Yeah, I think you're correct on all your assumptions. Rent with the option to purchase, I don't know that we've discussed that. So I think we would need to dig into that a little bit. And, that question you just asked, and really all the questions, I think, are proof of why this call was such a good idea. So that's definitely something that we will look into. I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head, but if any one of my colleagues wants to jump in, or we can just maybe make a note to follow back up with you, Jennifer, on that answer.
Okay. Okay, LK, you're next.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted this time.
You are.
So I have, first of all, Nathan, know that I have tenants that cannot fill out a money order. So please make this form as simple as possible. Every field in a check filled out wrong is a very real first of the month thing for me. So it's got to be as simple as possible, please. But I have a lot of tenants that are able to use DHHR's rental assistance. And if I agree to take the money from DHHR, I have to agree to keep the tenant for another rental period, even if that's paying in arrears. Is this going to have any requirement like that?
It will. That's one of the topics that we wanted to make everyone aware of on this call. So to accept these funds, we want a commitment from the landlords that for the months that are being paid, that the landlords will agree not to evict for issues of non-payment. And, you know, it just a little bit more on that. You know, the purpose of this program is for housing stability, emergency rental assistance. And what we would like to see here, and we want to make sure that we don't pay for, you know, rental expenses, and then the end result is not housing stability. So, you know, we're not asking for commitments, you know, long out in the future. We're just asking for commitment that for the periods that will be covered with this assistance, that that there will be no evictions for issues of non-payment.
Okay, Rob and Aaron, you all are next.
What would the estimated turnaround time be to receive the funds once the application is received by you guys?
So that one's a tough one to answer at this point. I wish I had a better answer for you, and that's something else that we can maybe follow up with Jennifer on. We are working through finalizing the application process and then testing the software that we are going to be using for the application intake and application review. So once we get a little bit further down the road with that, we may have a better answer for you. But I think one of the things that's making it so hard to answer is that anticipating demand on this is very hard to do. We don't know how many applications we're going to get hit with right up front. So it's just a really tough question for us to answer right now, but I hope to have a better answer for you soon.
Can I comment on that, Nate?
Sure.
Well, you know, Nate's right. We expect probably a lot of applications right at the very beginning. And I'll be honest with you guys, we've never done a rental assistance program before. This is a brand new federal program. We're rolling it out, and I know we'll figure it out and get better at it. But I can also tell you, I believe it's going to take us a minute to figure it out. I mean, those first few applications are going to be slower than the next few applications. So just asking for a little bit of patience here. We know you all need the money, and we're going to get it out as fast as we can, but I know we're not going to be perfect right out of the gate.
Okay. And if I could follow up on what you were saying before about if the landlord does receive rental assistance funds, that and let's say, you know, you paid for the month of February and then April comes and, you know, we're at the same spot, they reapply again, but you guys don't have the funds. So am I understanding this correctly? Once we receive the funds, we couldn't evict regardless of whether you could continue to provide rental assistance until the program is scheduled to end?
Well, can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure.
Question.
Yes. So when you were talking before about if the landlord does receive rental assistance funds, that we would not be able to evict. Is that correct? If later down the road they didn't pay their rent again, and you guys couldn't provide rental assistance to them, would we still be able to evict later down the road if you couldn't provide assistance?
So I don't believe, and I can open it up to my colleagues if they're aware of anything different, but to my knowledge, we are not asking landlords for commitments in the future not to evict, and our primary concern is for the periods that are covered by the assistance. So, you know, if something happens in the future, I think that's something that's outside of this program and what you're agreeing to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kathy and
You're
Eric Wood each have a question.
Go ahead.
I have to find, okay. I know we can't get into specifics here, but I have a tenant that we evicted in December. And they were given 60 days to come up with their money. So in theory, we could evict them now. But if we find that they don't qualify by their income, all they would have is our eviction notice. And if we can't apply, if we can't start the eviction process until March, then they're going to owe us that much more money. They have paid us exactly $300 over 2 months period of time when they were supposed to pay us at least $500 a month to get caught up. So I'm trying to figure out here, do we even bother to approach them about providing their income, which based on their pay stubs, I don't know that they would qualify. I just, you can't answer the question, but I'm a little bit at a loss to how to proceed here. Because if we allow them to stay indefinitely, we may just take more hosing and more hosing. So I'm not, landlords have been there too many times. So I'm just trying, I mean, I have some clear cases of where I feel like tenants would have qualified, and I'm willing to work with them. But
how many months in arrears would this cover?
So this could go, the arrearages can go back to April of 2020. And, you know, a tenant can get up to 12 months of assistance. And in extreme cases, if it's needed for housing stability, it's possible that it could go to 15. And I think it was Kathy that described the situation. I know that there's probably countless situations like that where, you know, the tenants or the landlords are owed so much money, and they're difficult situations for, you know, the landlords and the renters. So I think we want to steer clear of giving you any type of advice on those types of situations, but we do understand that, you know, there's a lot of tough situations out there, and just hope that this program can solve some of those situations.
Well, as of right now, we can evict them.
well, yes.
Because the magistrate gave them specific things they had to do, and they have not done it. So at this point, we could evict them right now. And the issue is it worthwhile investigating to see if we can keep them or not by providing them money through this program?
But it's a judgment call on our part. They can't make that.
Well, we don't know what their income is. That's the key. If he has been laid off for any reason, I could see where this program would help him. Otherwise, he just, we'll get further into that, as they will.
Okay. John Pritt's got a question, but he cannot get his mic working. So he's asking if there will be an option to set up electronic payments or direct deposits to landlords.
Crystal, do you want to take that one?
Sorry, was it about direct deposit for landlords?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yes. We're actually looking into that now. One of our concerns will be we have a choice whether we can go checks or ACH. We're a little concerned with the volume going through, how we'll communicate and match up which ACH goes with which renter. So we're working through that detail now. I'd be interested to know what your thought is on that. Does anyone have a thought on what their preference would be for something like that?
I think as long as we receive like a monthly statement of a breakdown, kind of like we do for our HUD vouchers and such, I wouldn't see no problem with our property managers being able to decipher where the money goes to.
Okay.
You
know, there's only so much detail as you know, so we don't know how many each landlord are going to get and whether that would be confusing to the landlord or not. So
yeah.
Thank you for that suggestion.
There still would be some kind of identification, right, on your card on the particular payment, no matter whether it's by check or by direct deposit. You still have something on there, an account number or something, so it should be easily identifiable.
Yes, the difference would just be timing. that with the check, it would be on the stub. So you'd have them right there with you at the same time. Through an ACH, you're going to get it in your bank one day and potentially get the notice from us a different day. It would just be a matching situation for whoever receives the funds.
I'd be glad to do it. I don't have any problem doing that.
Okay.
I can see how from the housing development's perspective, they're like, oh my God, we don't want every landlord calling us saying, where does this money go? So I see the tough side for you guys on that, but yeah, I don't know whether that could be sent out with an email saying this amount is going to your account and this is the breakdown of tenants is a possibility. But yeah, I can see how that's a tough one for you guys. All right, I don't see any other questions in the box here, so I'm going to ask another one that's on our list. Can tenants receive assistance for back rent on one unit if they've already moved to another unit?
I don't believe so. I would want to talk this through a little bit more with as we can, as we finalize our program materials. But I think one immediate cause for concern is it just raises a lot of questions for us on verification of someone's current address and past address. We want to be careful of duplication of benefits and fraud and things like that. So I think that raises a lot of questions on if we can verify all those things, but also if it's allowable under the legislation also. I don't know if it's clearly stated in the legislation. So our program currently does not allow for that situation that you described. But again, as Erica kind of said at the beginning of the meeting, we're still finalizing our materials.
Yeah, it may be something to follow up with on the federal level, because if we're trying to stop housing instability, if they get, we've got a judgment on it and we push that through, then next time they go to rent something, they're probably getting denied. Where if they get assistance and can get that paid off and don't have a judgment out there against them, then, hopefully they can go find another house with no judgment. But if they have a judgment against them, that can create problems the next time they try to rent somewhere.
Okay. That's something that I don't think that we have thought through yet. So I appreciate that.
That really depends whether the landlord does the background check.
That may also come down to whether they're in housing now, because I think it's to prevent housing instability and prevent eviction. So I just don't, we definitely need to look at it more, but I don't know if that would be an option if they're in a place now, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But we can look at that.
Okay. And the next question is on the frequently asked questions. And again, for landlords, go to the West Virginia Landlords, WVLandsassociation.com, click on the Mountaineer Rental Assistance button, and all these documents are on there at the top of that page. The frequently asked questions they gave us, the agenda for this meeting, the income limits, all of that stuff is on that page. But on the frequently asked questions, number 10, this is talking about if a grantee, which is the grantee, is that the landlord? I'm not sure I'm reading this correctly. Or is the grantee you all?
The grantee is the Housing Development Fund in that document that you're referencing.
Okay. What confuses me about that, if the grantee is the Housing Assistance Fund, the question on number 10 is, may a grantee provide assistance to households for which the grantee is the land. Oh, I understand. So okay, I'm understanding this better now. That's say Charleston Housing was running this program, then the question would be if they are the landlord. So, okay, we'll ditch that question because that doesn't really apply here. All right. And then the next question is on the FAQs number 9. I just want for you to stress to the landlords that this program is available for people that are in a federally assisted property, but not a federally assisted tenant. So if somebody's in public housing, this is available to them. If they're a Section 8 tenant, this is not available to them. Is that correct?
So you're correct that there are scenarios that where those tenants can be eligible and scenarios that make them ineligible. And it all comes down to the type of rental assistance that's provided to the individual tenant. And if the assistance can be adjusted to account for a tenant's loss of income. So if the tenant has the ability to go to the federally assisted source and say, my assistant or my income has dropped, I need a income recertification and I need my assistance to be adjusted. Those tenants are ineligible for the program because of the type of assistance that they're receiving. However, if a tenant is receiving a fixed amount of assistance and that assistance cannot be adjusted to account for decreases in their income, then those tenants are eligible for the unsubsidized portion of their rent. So you got a tenant who has a rent payment of say $750. Their monthly rental assistance is $500, and that will never change no matter the circumstances. Then that unsubsidized portion of the $250 would be eligible for assistance under this program. But just by being in a certain type of property doesn't make them ineligible. It's more about the type of assistance that they are receiving.
Okay.
It gets a little complicated, so I'm happy to answer any questions or clarifications on that, but it comes down to like a fixed or floating type of assistance.
Okay. So for the landlords, just to make it clear, Section 8 tenants, they are able to go to HUD and ask for those changes. So Section 8 tenants are not eligible for this. I have one more question, then we're going to see if anybody has questions that can't chat. Erica had asked me about how common verbal leases were. So I assume that means you guys are thinking through that. I was going to see what your thought was on verbal leases with this program.
So we'd love to have a written lease. I think that's best case scenario for us, but we understand that other situations are present. So there will be an option for those types of situations. They can fill out a form that we've created that needs to be signed by the landlord and the tenant, but it describes the lease terms, and both the tenant and the landlord are attesting to the terms of that lease.
Okay. John Pritt has another question. He's asking, do you have a max amount of rent that she'll pay per type of unit? Like HUD will say if it's a 1-bedroom, $6.99 a month is the most, rent plus utilities, or a max rent on any, number of bedroom sizes. Are there any limitations like that in this program?
So there are some limits that we're keeping an eye on as a reference point to make sure that that amounts aren't inappropriate or cause for concern. We don't have currently a stated cap that says if the rent costs are X amount of dollars, then they're not applicable. But we will be referencing limits such as fair market rent to make sure that the rents that are being requested don't appear to be fraudulent or excessive. Because with I think our mindset there is with the income limits for eligibility. I think it would be an extreme scenario if we saw eligible tenants with very, very expensive monthly rent payments. So those are things that would be flagged and may merit some additional questions and clarification. But as of right now, we do not have a strict cap, and we're kind of taking the approach of just looking at what's due and documenting what's due and verifying eligibility.
Okay. John has another question here. He said, will they pay rents that include utilities, like a furnished unit with electric, water, sewer included?
So if the rent expense includes utilities, then the rent is eligible under the rent portion of the MRAP program. But those types of expenses would not be eligible under the utility portion of the program, and only utilities that are billed directly from the utility company to the tenant would be eligible for utility reimbursement.
Okay. Rob and Aaron have the next question.
Yes, so I just wanted to go back to what you just previously said. So just to be clear, you will honor the rental amount that is indicated in the contract if there is a contract?
We will, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking to quantify and document the amounts that are due. But we do want to be very cognizant and be on the lookout for rent costs that seem excessive. So we will be referencing some, local and statewide statistics to try to look for outliers and things that may look like a problem. So we just wanted to be upfront with that. There's no strict cap on this, but we just want to be prudent with these funds and want to make sure that we're on the lookout for excessive rent costs.
Yeah, the only reason why I bring that up again is because, the magistrate will honor a contract. So they will honor a rental amount in that contract. So, if they were to apply with you and you denied because you guys didn't agree with the
We understand that, and that would not be the reason that we would consider denying the request. I think those references would help us identify something that could possibly be fraudulent. If we can verify that these charges are due and that they are owed, I think that's what we're looking to verify so that we can provide the assistance.
I got you. So you just want to make sure it's not fraudulent, basically.
Yeah, we don't want to renegotiate your leases. That's not what we want to do. We want to. We know that you guys are owed a lot of money. We know that there's a lot of renters that need this assistance. That's what we want our focus to be on, is getting those funds to the landlords on behalf of the renters and have a good impact in the state.
Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Kathy, you have another question?
Yes. We just sent out 1099s to our vendors. Don't employees get 1099s from their employers? Wouldn't that show their income? That would be faster than a tax return for 2020.
They get a W-2.
Or a W-2. Would their W-2 forms work? Or would you prefer pay stubs?
There are many options. W-2s are one of them. So that is something that that people should have or should be receiving if they haven't yet. So I think that's a good option to show their income, especially on an annual basis. So there are several different ways, and W-2s are one of them.
So most people should probably get those during the month of January, or rather February, if they haven't already. And you're saying this program, we can't really start initiating the process until March. Is that correct?
That's correct.
13:02 p.m.
Okay,
Let me say something about initiating the process. I mean, the program isn't open. We're not taking applications, but I would certainly encourage you all to start having communications with your tenants. You know, if they don't already know that this program is available, make sure that they understand something is coming, and that you all need to work together, you know, to make these applications. I mean, Nate's talked about, we've got to have stuff from the tenant and we've got to have stuff from the landlord. So opening up a conversation, letting them know that they're going to need to produce some of these documents. Obviously keep looking at our website, because we'll put up more information as we know what it is, and encourage them to do so. But there's nothing that says you can't go ahead and start talking to your tenants.
Okay.
Okay, Denise, you got the next question?
Yeah, my question was on late fees that are assessed based on a written lease agreement that has that stated directly in there. Will the assistance apply also to the late fees that are due, or only strictly for the past due rent amount?
I'm glad you brought that up. This is a topic that we wanted to discuss with this group. It may be a sensitive topic, but we definitely want your input on this. At the program level, we want there to be an ability for late fees to be paid. These are amounts that are owed to you. I'm sure that by having past due renters, that has created issues on your end. So we are very supportive of having late fees as a part of this program, but we want to be careful, because this program is geared towards emergency rental assistance, and we want to have the biggest impact that we can. We want there to be some sort of acceptable range of late fees that would be applicable to the program, and not knowing how every lease is structured with every landlord and every tenant throughout the state. We're anticipating that we may see a very wide range of late fees built into these leases. So it would be ideal if we could establish a reasonable range of late fees, or a cap on late fees that would be acceptable, knowing that we want these late fees to be paid, but at the same time, every dollar spent on late fees is a dollar that may not be available to cover other portions of rent. So I would love to hear comments from this group. I know those are fees that are due, and we support that. But are there any comments about what a reasonable range of late fees could be as we finalize our program development?
Say, Rob and Aaron, you want to jump in? You had a comment down there.
Yeah, so I would say a minimum of 5%. We're standard 5% of rent due. So I think that's pretty standard where we are in the Eastern Panhandle. I don't know about other areas, but I would say that's the minimum. And I know people that do charge more than that, but I would say you want to be at least 5% of rent due.
6%.
Yeah, some have $10 a day with a max cap at $150 a month. That's my late fee policy on mine. Ken Kelly, what you got? What's your late fees? No, Ken's muted.
Well, I've heard late fees going from $10 up to $50.
Well, hers is up to 150.
Well, I just heard now one at 150. Could possibly, depends when they pay it. We have a flat late fee. After the 5th, you're late.
We've got James says 6% in Hurricane. LK says a minimum $50 late fee with a per day fee to a maximum of $150. John says $50 late fee after 6 days, and that's a flat rate. So they are going to be all over the board. They really
Yeah.
are. I
Yeah,
would
and
say
if I could-
really your cap probably should be a percentage of the rent, because if they're on a $400 rent, $150 is a little out of line. But if they've got $1,000 rent, maybe if $150 isn't out of line.
That's what I was getting ready to say is we do have like that 5% only makes sense at a certain rental rate. But once we get to another rate, it's a flat fee that we charge. And I want to say, what is that flat fee we charge?
At least 100.
Yeah, so about where Jennifer's probably at there, it sounds like. So 5% doesn't make sense on $500 or $400. On $1,000 up, it does.
All right, Matt Curry
Okay.
says 25 on the 2nd, but Matt, if you want to jump in here on what happens if it's, the 25th of the month, is it still just $25? Or are you adding more?
I mean, I just keep it at 25, I mean, it's, we tried to do it on the 2nd, reminding everybody that we want our money on the 1st. Late fees are always kind of loose. Sometimes you get them from magistrate court, sometimes you don't. And if they're already in the hole so much, it's just, you're just happy to get it at some point. But 150, I like your idea there. I might have to adjust a bunch of those.
I want them to have an incentive. If you've already charged the 25 on the 2nd, they don't have any incentive to pay it on the 3rd or the 4th or 5th. They're going to wait till the 20th. But if you charge them, I do $50 on the 6th and then $10 a day after that, so that every day that goes by is another $10 that gives them an incentive to pay as soon as they can. And then I cap out at 150. Now, a lot of times, if this is a tenant that hasn't been late and they're a good tenant, I'll waive those fees if there's something specific going on, but I want them to know I want their rent. All right, Denise says, rent's due on the 1st, 5-day grace period, 6 is $50, $15 a day until the end of the month, until the new billing cycle starts. Jill says ours is 50 on the same 6 and $10 a day. So hers is the same as mine.
Okay. This is helpful. I think just in the spirit of being able to operate the program efficiently and to get the funds out the door, if there's a way for us to establish an acceptable range instead of digging into each lease agreement and trying to figure out or verify the amount stated that were due based on the structure of the late fees. I think that's what we're trying to avoid. And these comments have been very helpful to give us some information to work with. But I just want to reiterate that, we're not trying to eliminate late fees. We're supportive of including late fees in this structure. And, your comments here have helped us. We'll take this information and try to come up with something that works for both of us.
Okay. I don't have any other typed questions. Does anybody have questions that couldn't type in their question that wants to jump in? All right, sounds like no. All right, Nathan, did you have any other information for us?
No, I had a big long list of other topics to address, and your questions slowly took away my list. So that's a good thing. I think that means we were thinking about the same types of subjects. So I don't have anything. I'd love to open it up to my colleagues if they have anything, or to the rest of the group if there are any other additional comments or questions or concerns.
I'll just end by saying, I appreciate all the input. Like I said, this has been good to hear your all's perspective, and, just reiterate, we'll be coming out with additional information as we have it. We're still waiting on some updates from the Treasury Department. And, when we get some more information, we'll be pushing it out so you can share it with your members as well.
Okay. And yeah, landlords, remember, as soon as we get any information from Housing Development Fund, we're sending out emails. We're using the Facebook group. If any of the members are not in our private Facebook Facebook group. Please send me a friend request. My name, if you're on the screen here, you can see the spelling, but it's McQuerrey if you're on the phone. If you send me a friend request and then tell me to put you into that Facebook group, sometimes I can't find you guys, so I've got to wait for you to find me, and then I can put you in that private Facebook group, and we push a bunch of stuff out that way too. So Erica and Nate, thank you so much. You don't know how much we appreciate you guys getting on here and giving us some guidance on where this is going and letting us be a part of forming the program. We appreciate
Well, we
it.
need you to make the program successful too. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, somebody has another question. Hang on. Kathy Woods got another question.
Okay. This is general enough that you could give me advice. If we find a tenant has not been unemployed, does not meet the criteria of 80% of their income, that they have enough income to pay their rent, we've evicted them. Is it worth, but we've got a court order. Is it worth our while to pursue this program if they don't meet the income qualifications?
No.
Well, it's I will say, and again, we don't want to give advice, but we don't have any wiggle room on the eligibility criteria. Those are part of the legislation. So, if they're ineligible, they're going to be ineligible when the application is submitted.
Okay.
Now, Kathy, I would say have them go to the other agencies. There are a ton of other agencies with money right now. So definitely hit those other agencies, get United Way and, Heart and Hand gives some, a lot of the church agencies are giving money. There is a lot of money out there. If they're a veteran, there's a ton of money out there. There's money flowing right now for tenants, but the tenant has to want to get it and they have to do a little work to get it.
Right. Okay.
And if anybody knows of some different agencies, I know that I think it was Diana said she had a list, and I think we have some on the site anymore. If you guys have those agencies, please send them to me. We'll get those all up on the landlord site too.
We just got a nice check from United Way.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing that United Way's got money, so definitely go that route. Okay, anybody have any last minute questions before we go? Nope, looks like no. All right, we've zoomed enough questions at you. All right, you all have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.